So hello good people of the internet, this is Tommy Kelly and this is of course the Tommy Kelly podcast. And this podcast, the recording of this podcast, I actually hope this records, has been the hardest podcast to ever record ever, because anytime I go to do it, it just falls apart for many different things. I've been trying to record this podcast, not like different versions of it, for about a week and a half at this point, and every time something goes wrong and it just doesn't happen. Last week there was no podcast put up because it became so frustrating that I just couldn't face things that stopped working. It wouldn't work. There'd be just noises. There would, suddenly people would arrive that I'd have to deal with. There just wasn't, and then there wasn't time and there was just too much going on. Or I would start recording and then halfway through I'd just completely lose my train of thought and the whole thing would be gone, or I just couldn't get my head around it anyway. So I said I'd leave it for the week just because it was just too much and it was just obviously not the time to be going on. And then I had some time yesterday, on Sunday, where Vanessa said she would go to her parents' house with the baby and give me some time to do the podcast and trying to get ahead or whatever. So of course, immediately the computer stops working, because that's the rule. And then it wouldn't read my hard drives. When I got that working, then all my USBs stopped working. Then my microphone wouldn't work. Then when I finally got all that working and all that thing and everything right, the record button on Adobe Audition wouldn't work. And so I finally got that sorted out and the whole thing done, and I recorded an entire podcast yesterday. And when I played it back, it was all distorted. My voice had become really, really deep, so there was like some sort of phase shift on it or a pitch shift on it. It was all crackly and all totally useless and unusable. And I was going, oh man. It's very disheartening and very frustrating and very anger-inducing when you're constantly trying to do something and it feels like the world is against you and that it's deliberately against you, like all of these hindrances and annoyances and little things. There's a kind of, when you come from a new age kind of a background, which I guess for the most part I do, there's that whole thing of everything happens for a reason, or these things, as my mother used to say, these things are sent to try you, but that there's some reason for it, that it's some sort of growth, it's part of the lesson, it's part of life. And it's part of how you become a greater person or you spiritually evolve or any of those things. Which is all well and good, other than that's mostly bullshit, because so much happens in life where it's just frustration for the sake of frustration. It's just hurt for the sake of hurt. It's not like a learning thing. It's like that you feel that in some way, because I look around and go, well, what did I learn from the experience of being hindered and being frustrated and for things around me breaking? And look, what is the lesson that I'm not getting there? And I suppose the lesson would be that I should check that if it's Mercury retrograde, which it isn't. For most of it is now. It turned retrograde on the 17th and it's the 19th now. Yeah. So that doesn't account for everything that's been happening over the last week or so or whatever. And besides, I'm pretty sure that whole Mercury retrograde thing, I was going to say is rubbish, but it's obviously not rubbish because it affects so many people. It doesn't affect me in the way it affects you. I definitely get things that feel like I'm in Mercury retrograde, but they usually don't happen when Mercury is in retrograde or when other planets are in retrograde. It's usually, this is going to be the fun times, and then everything falls apart or whatever. So yeah, I don't understand. I don't know what the lesson has been meant to have learned from being constantly kind of frustrated. I have talked about this before. It's definitely a pattern in my life that happens where I feel like I'm deliberately being antagonized by the universe or consciousness or whatever for whatever reason. So much so that at one point I tried to humanize that or demonize it even, and give it a form and, kind of a servitor form or whatever to try and separate that kind of thing. Because I'm not convinced, that even though it feels like you're being antagonized by the classic kind of demon devil thing that's kind of doing it for the fun of it, I'm not convinced of that. I actually had a conversation on Facebook recently. I put up a post about on the Adventures in Woo Facebook page about someone who had made a Ouija board out of, on the wooden floor, whatever. And who was to know that that would be one of the most controversial posts I've ever put up on Facebook? Oh my God, people are really are really scared of Ouija boards, or that kind of thing. And it's just kind of come up. It's going, oh well, if you want to. Someone said, if you want to have an unclosable demon portal in your house, then go for it. And I was going, well, I'm not, I don't believe in demons. I don't, so I think my response was, well, you would have to believe in demons in the first place to do that. People got really annoyed about that there's this fear of demons. And anyway, someone else came in and it escalated into a kind of this person was giving out to me saying I didn't understand magic and stuff, which is, perfectly understandable or perfectly a legitimate attack to give me. I don't understand magic because no one does. I'm saying that I certainly didn't understand chaos magic. And I'm saying, well, if you're saying that demons exist as actual things, entities, real entities, from a chaos magic point of view, then from my perspective, other perspectives are available, you aren't getting what chaos magic is, because certainly chaos magic wouldn't in any way purport that any of this is real, because in fact nothing is real, etc., etc. But so my point was that I don't tangentially, Tommy, that I don't believe in demons in the sense of well, I don't see. Thing is, because I don't believe in demons, or I don't believe demons are real. I also don't believe I'm real, or this is real, the room I'm in, or that the actual existence is real. So when I say I don't think demons are real, I don't think any of it's real. So they're probably, in a sense, demons are as real. They're not as real as the bed that's sitting across from me now. They're not as real as my wife. They're not as real as my mortgage, but they certainly can act like they're real, and they can have an impact like they're real, and they can certainly destroy people's lives in many ways. And in the same way, any idea can do that. I see demons in the same way I see servitors as their ideas, and that's not, as I say, to downplay demons. Right? It's to upplay, or to bring up the idea of ideas being way more powerful than we give them credit for. So anyway, just to go back saying that I don't, so that's just to say that I don't think it's an actual demon. I'm not being, antagonized by an actual goetic demon or some sort of spawn of hell or whatever. But it's a good kind of descriptor of how it feels. It feels like I'm being antagonized purposely for the sake of antagonism. So rather than the New Age saying, oh, there's something to learn here, I don't feel there's any, well, I currently and my entire life have been unable to actually find a reason why, other than it plays into some sort of victim mentality thing I have, which I have to be aware of because that is one of my shadow things. Now, all of that said, what is going on is that over on Patreon, we're doing this thing called The Journey, which I've spoke about a couple of times on the podcast, a lot, I suppose, but not really an awful lot about it, more that it's happening. And so this month, basically what The Journey is it's a year-long kind of meditative shadow working, trying to become a better person, try to sort out some of your shadow stuff using meditation, servitors, and a monthly theme, so each month has a different theme. And some months, well, not to get into it, this month is about debt. And debt as in when you die. I know my accent can sometimes confuse people. It's not debt as in you owe someone money. It's debt as in you're going to die. And it's really, really been affecting me and really kicking my ass. And it's when people talk about going to the underworld, I've never, for years, I've never understood that expression. I thought, I spent some time in the underworld, and I go, what are you on about? What does that mean? And weren't fully explained it. But there's a video of, least I speak his name, Jordan Peterson, where he talks about the underworld as being something that kind of place you go to when you're like depressed or down, or when your life's falling apart, or things, unexpected travesties have happened, or things that are bad has happened, and you don't know how to cope, and you end up in this place, a mental place called the underworld. And when I got that into my head, that is like something that absolutely describes a sensation that happens to me. So last week when all of this was going on, by last week it's the previous, so it's about a week and a half in total. It's like the weekend before last weekend. So whatever, 11, 12 days ago it started. I could just feel the descent, but like the sinking, my brain just going, and it was like very quick, and then I'm in that place again, and it's very hard to describe. It's very hard to describe. If it's like, what is depression? When you describe depression, people have never been depressed, they don't understand, and you don't need to describe to someone who understands it, because it's not just feeling sorry for yourself. It's not feeling sad. It's not feeling oh poor me, life isn't the way I want it to be. It's certainly not because I don't get enough exercise or I don't eat right. And don't ever say that to a depressed person. Oh my God, it's like that's the most condescending, wrong thing you can say to people. Because I exercise more than I'd say most of you, and I eat better than most of you. I don't know you all personally, but I'm saying, knowing the kind of average eating and exercise patterns that people seem to have these days, I do way more than the average. So it's not anything to do with eating or exercise, which is the first thing most people say to you. And it's more than just, what have you to be depressed about? Number one, all of it. Number two, I don't know. I don't know what it is, and I don't know what the triggers are or whatever. But I know that the only way out of it is just to wait it out. And it can be days, it can be hours, it can be weeks. In this case, it was about a week and a half. And I'm a nightmare to be around, because all I want to be is alone. I can't deal with anything. I can't, I'm totally stressed all the time. I'm totally anxious all the time, and it totally feels like the world is not my friend. It's out to get me. It's kind of is. I don't feel connected to people. I don't feel connected to life, and it all. It's like, so. I think this time, because it hasn't happened in a long time. I haven't been this bad in a long time. And I think it is connected to the whole thing that we're doing with debt in the journey, and meditating on debt. The first things that happened at the beginning of this month when we started on the debt section, is that my meditation just stopped instantly. It was just like, I noticed I was lying in bed one night and it was late and I was tired, and I went, oh, I haven't meditated today. And that's the first time in a long while that has happened. But the interesting thing is, the next night, round about the same time, just about to fall asleep, I went, oh, look, I haven't meditated again today. And then, that's all it takes. 2 days haven't done it, and I haven't meditated in 2 weeks now. The meditation I was doing was a debt meditation. It was where you're letting everything go and you're preparing yourself for debt. Like anything that comes, rather than putting it aside, you'd let it go and see that that word, where it's it's only here for a short time and then it moves along, and it's not real, it's not eternal, and all that kind of thing. You just let it go and you let it die to all the things. Another part of the journey that we're doing this month, was part of the debt thing, is that we're physically preparing for debt, in the sense of sorting out things that you need to have sorted out if you died in the morning or you died at the end of the month, whatever it is. Like, so does your partner have access to your passwords, to your emails or any of that kind of stuff, to your bank accounts, do they know where all your insurance details, all your savings, all your money, all of those things that someone needs to know about if you died? Have you all those type of things in order? Have you your will made? Do you know what where you want your stuff to go to? And also then decluttering your life in any of the stuff that you have around you that you don't want to carry with you, or you'd be embarrassed to leave behind. Like, you've a really weird porn collection on your computer that if you died you wouldn't want anyone to find. It's getting rid of all that stuff now, doing it now. All of those books that you will never read, that someone else will give them away, all that junk you have in your room that you never sorted out, you've sorted out this month. So I've been doing all of this kind of stuff, and it's been very hard, and it's really kicking my ass and all that. And the kind of thing that comes to light about the whole thing is that dying is super attractive in many ways, and it just absolves you instantly of an awful lot of responsibilities, an awful lot of pain, an awful lot of hurt, an awful lot of sadness, an awful lot of future and potential sadness and hurt, and like that whole thing of knowing that everything around you is going to, disintegrate and be destroyed. Everyone around you is going to get sick and die. No one's getting out of here alive. The universe is eventually going to be frozen full of entry, everything's falling apart, all of that things. You'll never have to worry about a mortgage payment again. You'll never have to worry about offending someone again. You never have to worry about a responsibility that you have. You never have to worry about being afraid again. You never have to have any of these things. It's just no longer those things are a factor because you're dead and you don't have to worry about them. All your stresses, all your anxiety, all of these things. Years ago, when I met Stuart Wilde in Glastonbury, one of his helpers or whoever she was, assistants, entourage, when we got to the pub after the talk and we were hanging out and all that thing, and I was kind of very high, not drugs or drinking or any of that, but just very elated and kind of a bit energetically bouncy, and it was annoying Stuart in some ways. He says, you need to chill a bit, because it was like literally meeting my hero, and I was quite young and all of those type of things, and so she was like doing a kind of an energy thing on me. She was pulling down my energy. She had her hands on my head, and that kind of chilling me out, whatever. And she whispered in my ear, and she says, paraphrasing because it's years ago, she's going, the problem with you is that it's not that you're scared of death. That death's too easy. It's that you're scared of living, or something approximate to that. That's what was the gist of it, and that's what I mean. And that's so true, because the prospect of death, or even of the whole thing of having never existed, is particularly when I'm in that underworld down thing, it's a very attractive kind of thing that kind of, if you posed the question to myself at the time, would you have preferred to never have existed? The answer can be a lot of the times, not in my day-to-day life, in that, whatever that, the underworld, that when that happens, when I descend and when things go wrong, and that, the answer would be yes, I would prefer to have never existed. More so than like to kill yourself and walk out, because you cause an awful lot of pain that way, and destruction, and you have a lot of responsibilities, even though you didn't choose to come into this world. It was chosen for, well, maybe you did on some level, but the personality that is Tommy Kelly, the human that is, he certainly didn't, because he only existed from coming into this world. And I don't believe Tommy Kelly exists after I die either. If there is something that moves on afterwards, it's probably more a collective thing. I don't think that the reincarnation thing, if it is a thing, is Tommy Kelly's not coming back. Certainly Tommy Kelly is going to die in the same way that Tommy Kelly, me currently, if I did have previous lives, they're all gone. There might be some part of me somewhere that has some sort of collection of stuff that's happened to me, but this is the reincarnation and none of it's relevant, and so that nothing moves on or whatever. So the idea of then having never existed, way more attractive over killing yourself, because no one, it's like the destruction around, like say without getting too morbid, I hate talking about these kind of stuff because people get a bit strange with you afterwards, but like say someone who kills themselves is damaging an awful lot more around them than just themselves, even though whatever situation they're in. And I find it hard to, because people say, oh, that's a cowardly act and all that kind of thing, and it is a cowardly act in many ways. But Alan Watts talks a bit about suicide in his one of his talks. I think it's Out of Your Mind, and he's like kind of saying, well, it's a good question, and it's a legitimate question is to ask, well, why don't we kill ourselves? Like, what is it that makes us want to go on even when life is unbearable for so many people? What is this drive? And of course, the reductionist materialists would say that it's, the drive of nature, and to procreate and to keep the species going and stuff like that. And so that's possibly true, because from a spiritual point of view, the only counteraction you would have to that is damnation in hell, as you would have from the Christians for having, anyone who committed suicide. You don't get to be buried in holy ground. You're shunned, you're cast away and all that, as a way to stop people from doing it, because it seems like in many ways a legitimate kind of thing to do. In the same way, euthanasia, we have such issues with that we, someone who's in terrible, horrible, disgusting pain and all this, but yet aren't allowed legally to end their own pain because of the sacrosanct of life and how special it is. And it's so special that you should be tortured to hold on to it. So all of those things, make the whole idea of, it's more kind of pleasing, if you want. I don't know if that's the right word. To wish for having non-existed in the first place, because no one's going to miss you because you haven't existed. You're not letting anyone down because you never existed. You're not giving up your responsibilities that you have because you never had responsibilities in the first place. You are not, you're not doing any of these things where you're passing by suicide, say, is destructive, whereas having not existed is not destructive because you have nothing to destruct because you never existed. Now, the world would be different. And depending on who you are, the world would be a small bit different or a huge bit different, and all of those things. So these are kind of the meditations I've been having and the thoughts I've been having, all because I've been, situated in the whole debt meditation and the throes of debt. And, these are the things I asked for when I set up and I was doing the journey. I said I was going to do this to the best of my ability. So I knew there would be dark and horrible places. And certainly this one is the nadir of the year by far. This has kicked my arse totally. Also not helped by the daylight saving times, where you lose an hour and you feel like you're in constant darkness, and particularly in Ireland where there's constant darkness most of the time anyway. And I do have my vitamin D, and I also, around this time, of course, my I take 5-HTP because it keeps me sane. I ran out of 5-HTP. And so there was that all happening, all sort of coagulating into one kind of horribleness, that in some ways got a magical echo of not being able to do the podcast because I wasn't able to, or it feels like I wasn't let in some ways. So to kind of bring this round to having some sort of point and some sort of what can we do with all this, and how is this in some way relevant to other people, and what have I learned from this? When I say I have learned nothing from the frustrations of being frustrated, there's probably a lesson in that. It's just something that I feel an awful lot over my life, that I've been held back or that's deliberately antagonized. A lot of victim playing in that. Seems to be something else to it that I'm just not getting. But what have I learned from so far from halfway through the month of hanging out with debt, and about the attractiveness of debt, and rather than being scared of debts, you can see it as something positive. Not positive, you don't see it as something positive, but see a benefit to it. There's certainly a benefit to it. I'm not sure it's a positive benefit, but it's a benefit in that there's a cessation of suffering in the sense of dukkha. There's a cessation of dukkha, where the Buddhists would promise, though, however, that it's not the end of the cycle, that there's just more ahead. So what is the thing? Well, the thing is that I have to learn and I have to go for is, rather than seeing it from the point of view of to die is to be released, is to find reasons to live, and to find things that you would, if you didn't exist, if you had that question of would it have been better to not have existed, to be able to answer that, no, because of this. And I think kind of an explanation of that is a great way to look at it, because it's that whole thing of when you start doing, like, say, gratitude stuff and ever, it does kind of change your mind and your mentality a bit. So I think having a focus away from seeing things as a benefit to cessation of suffering, and instead trying to cultivating reasons to live is a nice kind of spin on thing, and a good change, and something that I should work on. And it's more than just reasons to live past duty and past responsibility. So it's like, while there's a reason to live is because I have a baby and I have a wife, and they're good reasons to live, they're still in many ways can be seen as a duty and as a responsibility and a guilt for not doing it, rather than as a pleasure in it. That's not to say that there's not a pleasure from it. That's certainly not what I'm saying, but it can be framed in that way. So it's not necessarily that kind of thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about things where there's a lack of duty or responsibility, where there's just a place of joy, of pleasure for the sake of pleasure, not pleasure for the sake of learning or for furthering yourself. It's like reading a fiction book that you're not going to learn anything about, other than you really enjoyed the story, which is just something I find it so hard to do these days. And I used to love reading fiction, but I kind of have to force myself into doing it because it feels like, but I'm not learning, I'm not growing as a person from this, even though you're always learning no matter what you're doing. But you'd be better off learning or reading some sort of biography and learning from someone, or a textbook or some occult book, or a grimoire, or something that is greater, or building your knowledge, or and somehow you're adding to your growth as a person and your personal development. Maybe you should be reading personal development books, or where you can't just settle and watch a dumb movie, in the back of your mind going, I should be watching a documentary or doing a Udemy course or some sort of thing, just to this constant growth. That even happened when I was doing the photography, where I said, I want a hobby, I want something that I enjoy and do it. And then I joined the club and I got into competitive photography and got all so serious, and it got the whole day. It was when I left that, I was going, what was I at? I wanted a hobby. And you ended up doing the exact pattern that you always do, trying to take something that you enjoy and justifying it so that you don't have to feel guilty about it just because you enjoy it. So just find out, I can put this into my self-improvement section of my brain, and then I can justify doing all of this photography because there's part of me that won't justify it because it's seen as an indulgence, or to how, God forbid, that you do something for the sake of pleasure, and that is only for pleasure. So the cultivation of reasons to live is the move towards pleasure and enjoyment, and the moments of enjoyment, past duty, past responsibility, past all of these things, all the mind stuff that you've put yourself through in order to justify. It's like we work so that we can afford to spend more time at work in a lot of ways, rather than we work to enjoy ourselves and to further ourselves, to get out of working, or we do things that we don't want to do, and it end up spiraling that our life becomes about these things that we don't want to do. And this comes from a guy who has such a blessed life, and for the most part totally gets to do what he wants to do. Didn't for a long while, of course, and it's an engineered life, and including lots of small s sacrifices. Because I don't work in a coal mine, and all of those things, and I'm a white man in the first world, middle class, all of these things, so small s sacrifices. But so I think hopefully this podcast has been a very tough one for me. Hopefully it's not been too negative, and don't be worried about me. This isn't a cry for help. This is me processing out loud things that I've been going through. One of my patterns is this frustration, feeling frustrated, antagonized by life and things breaking around me. So talking about that is now making it a thing. It's outside me. The underworld, the darkness places that I talk about, they're happening less and less. But when they do happen, I'm not going to ignore them, and I'm not going to hide from them. I'm not going to be embarrassed by them. I'm not going to pretend they don't happen. Least people think for whatever reason, from the podcast or the website or the blog or the videos, whatever, that I'm in some way insinuate or infer that I have all things worked out, that my life is perfect, that I have all the answers. I certainly don't. I have week and a half where it's just I fall apart as a person, that I go, it all falls apart, and I can't cope, and it's just all of these things. So I want to be open and honest about all of those things as well, and get all of that out. Then try to cultivate some happiness. That's not because happiness I'm not unhappy. That it's not an unhappiness thing. Cultivate some positivity, some pleasure, doing things for pleasure. I'm going to start playing games again, PC games. Again, it's so odd. My justification: I got a new graphics card, thanks in part to the patrons who support me on Patreon, and I got an SSD and upgrading my computer and all that thing, and that's massively going to improve my work life, and I can really utilize the 3D modeling type stuff and the 3D elements of Clip Studio, and Photoshop's going to run like a dream, and all these things, brilliant or whatever. And the thing of it is, of course, is that I get to play, games in an ultra setting and stuff like that. Whereas I would never have just bought the graphic card just for a pleasure thing. But it's thankfully it's coming at the right time where I can both be part of me can justify it as work and as a tax thing as well, because it's an expense, a business expense, while also getting a pleasure side out of it. But I want to move towards doing things purely for pleasure, purely for to get it, buy a graphics card purely just to play games on or whatever. But I'm not there yet. But that's the kind of my focus of what I'm trying to do, where I'm trying to be at. So, good people of the internet, this is what it is, and I'm not going to do the usual outro kind of thing on this one, where I try to sell you stuff or point you in the right direction. I want there's going to be changes in the podcast, and I'm trying to jig it around and trying to make it a bit more, I don't know, a bit more what I wanted to do and stuff like that. And it's becoming a bit formulaic and things like that. So if you want to know more about me, go to adventuresinwoobo.com. All of the stuff is there. You'll find everything you could possibly need. You don't need me to ramble on here about all the different places. So good people of the internet, may you have a wonderful week, and may, if you ever visit the Underworld, may you come out soon and with some positive change within. And if it is at all possible that you are similar to me in how you think or how you act, then try to cultivate opportunities in your life to explore pleasure for the sake of pleasure, without duty, without responsibility, without justification, without quantifying it, without qualifying it, without making excuses for it. Pleasure for the sake of pleasure. And may we all find so many more reasons to live and to want to be around, and to never answer the question, would you be better off having never existed, in the negative, and only feel that this is a positive thing. So good people of the internet, be well.